This is The Justin Jones Show. And now, your host, Justin Jones.
Certain pay cable channels, Grandpa's Bowels, Obama's immigration bill, this podcast. What are things that are blocked for 200, Alex? Ding, 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 ding. We're back. It's been a long time. Glad you're out there. That is, assuming anybody was ever out there in the first place. Frankly, I have no way of knowing. It's kind of like the apocryphal castaway on a desert island who writes a note and puts it in a bottle and casts it out to sea. Will anyone ever read it? I guess you don't know, but you might as well try. It feels a little bit better anyway. So, I was talking to a friend of mine today who, I think just in an effort to tweak me, was saying there was a certain gay bar in our neighborhood, and at some point a bunch of us should all go down there and hang out. I said, I'd prefer, is it a gay men or lesbians? She said, why? I said, I prefer lesbians. Frankly, I think lesbians are onto something, because I wouldn't date me either. I think they know something that the rest of people don't. I'd like to find out what it is. We're back with the show. Our guest in this installment is the wonderful Anne Gray. The interview was recorded some time ago, and it's my delinquency that's caused the delay that you're listening to at this point. I could make a joke about the NSA and Edward Snowden blocked the recording from going out, but frankly, if it's taking you as long to listen to this podcast as it took me to publish it, the joke wouldn't be funny anymore. So I won't make it. I'll skip it. But we're going to talk with Anne Gray about career choices and career options. Been doing some thinking of my own on that lately. It's a tough thing to think about. And I think one of the things you have to be okay with as you consider your choices and what you want to do is that it's okay not to know. I had a friend in college who, from the moment she was a little girl, she told me, she always knew she wanted to be a writer. She knew it the day I met her, and she knew it the day she graduated, and she knew it every day on either end. Yeah, I really hate those fucking people. So, for those people who don't know what they want to do, perhaps this conversation will be somewhat informative, illustrative, light-bearing, consciousness-raising, thought-provoking, instilling, stimulating, water-bearing, donkey, pack-carrying. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. I think you get the point. So, I want to talk about that, and You know, kids today don't even know who Johnny Carson is anymore. It's a real shame. We're losing a lot of good comedy out there. I guess Carson's been off the air for 20 years. And you know what Carson did really well? Once he went off the air, he stayed away. The man knew how to end a career. After that last show, hardly heard a peep out of him. Popped up in People magazine or the Inquirer occasionally. I think he appeared on Letterman briefly once. But I think there's the old showbiz adage, always leave him wanting more. There's a man who knew what that meant. Johnny Carson, always the king, folks. Polar opposite to that no-talent ass clown, Jay Leno. We won't talk about him. Guy gets fired, still can't leave the fucking Tonight Show. Yeah, I won't get started. But Johnny Carson, folks, two great skills. The man knew how to recover from a failed joke, and he knew how to exit the stage. They don't make him like that anymore. Him and Dick Cavett. Anyway, before we find ourselves too deep in the Gerald Ford administration here, we're going to move on. We're going to go forward and get to this interview. So, desert castaways, lesbians, Johnny Carson devotees, unite. Come home, America, for this exclusive podcast.
He sits behind his microphone. Johnny Carson. He speaks in such a manly tone. Johnny Carson. Every man comes on and says he's Johnny.
Okay, we're back, folks, and I am very pleased to introduce the next guest on the Justin Jones Show is my friend and classmate, Ann Gray. Say hi, Ann.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming by the studio. So, we are going to talk today about career growth and career change and transition and what opportunities might be out there for very talented people like yourself and me, but mostly we're here to talk about you, but I'm just a facilitator. But so let's talk about it. So why don't we start, Ann? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and just for those listeners who might want to know more, and tell us a fun fact about yourself.
All right. Well, how about if I start with a little bit about myself, which is I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and when I graduated from college, my dad bought me a one-way ticket to Washington, D.C. and said, I will pay your way for 30 days. And after that, I expect you to have a job with health insurance. And I did. I got a job on Capitol Hill and thought I might be here for a few years. And, never left. So I've built a really kind of interesting career in political service, and am thrilled to be at Darden and looking to kind of transition into some TBD career that will bring me as much joy and satisfaction as the past 22 years in the professional world have. And I think my fun fact would be that I once bought a house that and moved into the house and did some minor renovations, and almost as soon as I had unpacked the last box, the house started settling, and the basement started flooding, and the walls started cracking. And
Nice.
I ended up long story short, on an HGTV program called House Detective, where I had a very thorough home inspection on camera, and was then with the hope of getting a solution to our problem. And it aired many, many times in 2002, 3, and 4. And the silver lining was I did get my house repaired, and I also heard from a lot of friends from all over the country.
How did I not know this? So you were on air?
Yes.
Like extensively, like you were the star of the episode.
My family and I, Avery was in kindergarten. And it was 8 hours of filming, a 6-hour home inspection. It was a single camera crew. And what they would do is they would say, your foundation is cracking, and that's going to cost about $40,000 to fix. And then they would close up the horror on my face. And then
they'd say, that wasn't enough horror, Ann. Let's do a retake.
Exactly. That's exactly what they did. So they would cut and shoot from a different angle. And of course, every time you hear that news, the horror just escalates. But it was a really neat experience. And of course, I still have it on VHS.
Oh, I was going to say, is it on YouTube somewhere for us to watch?
Can we get it on YouTube, do you think?
I'm sure somebody knows how to do it. I mean, I don't even know how to do this podcast, but somebody could figure it out for you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put a pin in that. We'll come back to that.
Excellent.
So we're talking about careers, and I know that one of the biggest reasons that you came to Darden is because you wanted to make a change and you want to pivot into something new. So why don't we start with the old? Why don't you tell us what you're doing now and how long you've been doing it and what that's like?
Sounds good. Like I said earlier, I have a background in political service. I worked on Capitol Hill for off and on for the first 10 years of my career. And in 2001, found myself working very part-time for Spencer Backus a couple days a week and raising a young son. And Mrs. Backus called and said they are looking for some volunteers at the White House, and would you be interested in volunteering in Mrs. Cheney's office, the wife of the Vice President? So since I had plenty of free time, I said I would. And my first day was September 11th, 2001, which was really memorable for lots of reasons, and ended up 3 months into the volunteer opportunity, being invited to come and work full-time as the receptionist to the President of the United States in the West Wing of the White House. And I remember thinking about that role and thinking how exciting my career had been on the Hill and how I had been a legislative assistant and really had some great interests, but I had little interest in serving as anybody's receptionist. And my dear, dear friend, Melissa Bennett, said, "You are a fool. You need to take that job and give it a try." And I did. And of course, it was the greatest professional privilege I think I've had, greeting the visitors to the President, the Vice President, the Chief of Staff, the National Security Advisor, and really having a bird's eye view of everything that went on in the West Wing, and meeting some really extraordinary people over the course of 2.5 years. After I did that, I was preparing to leave the White House and head over to the Department of Commerce, and my boss said, "Would you stay and run the White House intern program? It needs help." And so I accepted that opportunity and stayed at the White House another 1.5 years, and in that time reorganized and all of the processes for White House interns, from application to security clearance to programming and discharge from the program. And in the 1.5 years I was the intern coordinator at the White House, I think I saw about 500 interns come through. There were 3 classes of about 100 kids each that came in for a fall, spring, or summer term. And I loved doing that job, but found myself over at the Department of Commerce as an executive assistant for the deputy secretary. And I remember being hired for that role and telling the deputy secretary that I had never been an executive assistant to anybody before. And he said, "Oh, that's okay. I don't care. You'll figure it out." And so I spent 2000.
So how did you get switched over from the White House to the Commerce Department?
So all of the jobs in the Bush administration were really, born from someone coming and tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, do you have any interest in doing this job?" And as I was considering every one of these moves, what I would always think about was, is this someplace I want to work? And is this someone with whom I'd like to work or work for? And in every case, the answer was yes. And I also remember, in some of these roles getting, after two years as a receptionist in the West Wing, I remember thinking, I could do this job forever. Or if I'm starting to get tired, I could turn it over to someone that's really enthusiastic about the job and find something else to do. And, I always tried to leave the jobs before I was really weary of doing them. And in the administration, that just kind of worked out very nicely. Someone coming along and saying, "Wouldn't you like to?" The things I tended to pursue never seemed to work out in my favor. The things I ended up doing were because someone invited me to come and join them. Does that help?
You moved to Commerce.
I did.
And then that's what brought you where you are now, is your boss at the Commerce Department brought you with you to...
He did. So he was the deputy secretary, the chief operating officer of a 38,000 person, 13 operating unit organization, and it was with worldwide reach. And I was his executive assistant for 2 years. And when he accepted a role as a CEO of a trade association, he had 38,000 people to choose from, and I was the fool that agreed to go. And I remember talking to him about the opportunity, and I remember saying to him, "What is it that you want me to do there?" And he said, "I don't care. Can you just come?" I don't know. Just come. And I had agreed to go. And at that time, I had a 5th grader, and my then husband was working for an Alabama-based company. And our family plan was that I would help David get up and running in this new role as the CEO of a trade association. And then when the school year ended, our family would move to Alabama. And that's not exactly what ended up happening. But I kind of went I say all that to help you understand that I went to the trade association not really expecting to stay longer than to get David up and running. And it's actually turned out to be a 5-year stint and counting. He's a fine leader. He's a turnaround agent. But I think even he knows and understands that some of his techniques that may have served him well to this point are no longer serviceable, and in fact that they have done damage, not just to me, but also to morale throughout the organization. And I will say, to his credit, he is working on it, but just like you and I are on a journey, so too is he on the journey. So, in terms of the perfectionism and the temper and the drive, that stuff can be difficult to navigate. But in terms of what you see is what you get, he is a person of great integrity. He tries to do the right thing at the end of the day. He is smart, and he has a masterful ability to kind of read the compass, set the direction, develop a strategy and an action plan. And where he struggles is kind of rallying the troops. He rallies them, but it's a hard rally. It's a hard rally.
Yeah.
And I know that we know a lot of people in this town, and they're not all easy to work for. But I would rather work for someone who's difficult but of personal integrity than for someone that lacks. The Darden experience has opened me up to an awful lot of other management styles because, and I every time I go on grounds, in some ways it's difficult because it magnifies what I'm dealing with in my office. And maybe it does for you as well. We've talked a little bit about that. But it magnifies that in the role where I sit, I have to sit in the box, stay in my lane, do my job, keep my head down, and keep my mouth shut. And the longer, the more we spend time on grounds and with our classmates and with this extraordinary group of professors and guest speakers and people in the Darden community, the more I can really see that where I am is not where I ought to be long term, which I knew. But it's also not a reflection of who I am as a person and my abilities and my capacity for growth. And so it's always hard to go to Darden sometimes and deal with that reality. It's also hard to come back, having had this robust experience over the weekend, and have to sit in my desk and do my job because I need that job in order to keep all these other things afloat.
Yep, I hear you. It's a tough juggling act, and it's like sometimes the contrast is very what's the word, jarring, or just the gap between what you can see versus where you are. I don't know, do you know what I mean? I mean, just when you see all the possibilities from what different people in the class are doing, or you get excited about some of the class material, or
a great conversation.
Yeah, or just talking to Connie about career stuff, or talking to other people about what they're doing. So,
I think it, you almost go from an environment where people are really interested in what you have to say, and where you're contributing to the conversation, and where you may be leading a discussion or guiding, helping someone else with something in the area in which they struggle, and then you go back to your day job where it's sit down, shut up, and follow directions.
Yep, back in a box. That's it.
And I would say for my boss, that's a very intimate, when you're somebody's right arm, it's a very personal and intimate relationship, not unlike being someone's speechwriter or someone's mouthpiece.
Someone's propaganda arm.
Yeah. Yeah. We did have a difficult conversation 2 weeks ago, right after LR2. Earlier this year at my performance review, which was exceptional, he said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "You know what I'd really like? I'd like a title change that better reflects my role in the organization."
And he was like,
He delegated it to our chief operating officer. And I met with her, and she is not a fan and has never been a fan. And I'm not going to turn her heart. The best I can do, and she's based in Chicago, and the best I can do is stay out of her sight. And so...
Your boss should have known this ahead of time. I mean...
I think he's obtuse.
He was kind of sandbagging it to begin with by sending it to her.
Yeah, fast forward to 2 months later when she calls and says, "We're not going to give you a title change. Maybe closer to your graduation date we'll consider it." And I did not lose my cool with her over the phone, but I lost it with my boss. And I confronted him and said, knew this was important to me, you delegated it, you delayed a decision for 2 months, and then you delegated the news, it's not okay. And he made it all about himself and basically said, how dare you question my judgment? And the conversation was a little heated and emotional for me. It was really tough to talk like this, but he said, after 7 years, it's okay to have this conversation. And so the way we wrapped it up was his strong wish that I stay in my role through close to graduation. And one of two things will happen. We'll reevaluate my role in the organization, and or he will help me build a bridge to whatever the next step ought to be. And I think for me, rather than burn the bridge, unless something really super comes along, I need to buckle down and accept and appreciate that I make a living wage in an organization where I leave at 5 o'clock every day so that I can go home and do my schoolwork, so that I can be a decent student in this program, so that I can find the next opportunity. And so I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's going to be, it is, I'm going to have to continue working on developing the skills I need to maintain the status quo at work and focus the growth outside of my current professional circumstance.
I do the same thing. I feel the same way. It's tough because you feel like you've got to kind of, you're talking about being in a box or being put in a box at work, but then also, at least this is just me, maybe not you, but I guess the only way for me to kind of keep that up, what you described about, focusing your efforts and your growth on school and other things outside of work, is it almost feels like then I'll put myself in the box at work just because it's like easier, or that's just like, it's just the easiest way to kind of get through it, get by, and
yeah.
just because I'm just like, well, I can't focus on, I just do what I have to do. I can't focus on extra here because I need to put my focus over here. I don't know. That's just me, but.
Well, you're not, I think your role sounds very exciting, but I know you certainly discount it because you've been doing it for so long. It's probably second nature. And one thing I'm doing is, even though I have a perception of my role in the box in my current organization, and I have a perception of my prior professional roles, it's really important for me to reframe those in a way that's valuable to a listener and that maybe more accurately reflects the value and gravity and transferability of some of those experiences. And I think that that's going to be important for both of us as we try and, I hate to use the term sell ourselves, but position ourselves, frankly, for the next great opportunity. And so one thing I hope we'll discuss further, if not tonight, then throughout the process, is how can I reframe this role I have at PCI to show a prospective employer how this experience adds value? Because it's real easy to focus on the things that have been difficult, but I think, and the things that are what I would call trapped equity that aren't transferable to another role. But I think I need to really think most importantly about what is transferable, and not get so bogged down in, anybody could do this job, because really anybody can't do this job based on the expectation and the personality of the employer. And so it takes a really special person to do your job. to translate the voice and the ethos and the pathos of another person into words that are going to resonate with whatever the audience might be. That's a gift.
Yeah, you've got a point. It's a lot easier to see other people's gifts or strengths than your own sometimes.
And I bet in your mind, even though you're too polite to say it, I bet in your mind you went, whatever, you fool. Whatever. But that is really true. I can't step into your shoes and do your job. I might be able to get the words down on paper, but I don't think I have the depth and breadth of experience to quickly analyze circumstances the way you do, to know and understand your boss's voice and dialect and approach to problem solving and communicating. That's a talent. And if you can do it for him, you can do something even greater in another organization.
Really, the secret is just dropping a lot of references to the Kentucky Derby.
See?
And using words like rim-racked and other little southernisms. But
exactly.
So let me ask you this. What, okay, this is a off-the-wall question. Not off-the-wall, but out of left field. What did you want to do, or what did you think you wanted to do for a career when you were a kid?
Wow, that's a good question. So I think I went through a lot of phases. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom for a while and, be the CEO of my household. I went through a nun phase. All Catholic girls do. It was short. I also wanted to be a truck driver, a physician, an attorney. And by the time I got to college, I really thought that I wanted to be involved running a government relations operation for a large Alabama-based company, maybe a bank, maybe a utility, maybe some other large enterprise. And most of those whims are long past. The stay-at-home mom business, I think I would have this is kind of veering off the professional. I think I would have done it had I chosen a spouse where there was enough trust. I think I always knew from the time that Avery was born, and I have said this to very few people, I knew from the get-go that at some point I might be on my own. And I think I knew it really early on. And so I know that's why I never was interested in having more children, because I really felt like someday I was going to have to do it by myself. And, is it true that maybe what we consider we create? Maybe. But I think that's why I never left the work world fully. I left, in large part when Avery was a year old, and just, piddled with part-time things and kept my toe in the water and did lots of little itty-bitty projects and worked for Spencer Backus, on a part-time basis, and did an awful lot of volunteer and charity work. And but I had no idea, honestly, even though that first idea was always kind of in the back of my head that I might have to do it alone. I had no idea when I went back to work full-time that 7 years later I would be doing it for myself. So I would have been a stay-at-home mom. I think that's the greatest privilege, is to raise kids. So sometimes you have to deal with what is, In fact, a lot of times you have to deal with what is. And I think that the thing in this train of things that comes closest to the pin, so to speak, is I am in government relations. I'm not associated with an Alabama company. I'm in a staff role instead of a line role. And, and I'm doing it alone.
Wow. Well, that's rough that you say that you knew that early on, but look at the good side. At least you were prepared. So
that's the kind of girl I am. I'm always prepared. My mom was prepared. My dad was prepared. You just have to deal with what is.
So, how old is your son now? 15? 16. Is he driving yet?
So he's just learning to drive. And the good report is he's cautious and thoughtful and not crazy. Am I the most patient teacher? I try. But it is a little nerve-wracking, yeah.
Stick shift?
No, automatic. But I only have one car, so he's driving my car, and I keep thinking, I don't want to be driving a jalopy by the time this is all over.
Now, what's your son's name again?
Avery.
That's right. So, what advice would you give Avery if he came to you saying he didn't know what he wanted to do when he grew up for a career?
Well, he has a deep passion for writing, and he pursues that vigorously, and I'm so happy that he's found an outlet that he cares deeply about.
Really? What does he do? Creative writing or
so he's
journalism?
Yeah, creative writing, and he has written several short stories, and by short I mean 45 pages in length.
Wow.
And he'll be going to writers camp at UVA this summer, which is exciting for him. But I think my advice to him, and he knows this, that it is not likely that he will be the next Stephen King. He could be, and he should continue to pursue that talent. But I think he should pursue it in conjunction with finding a way in which he can monetize his gift and passion. So whether he becomes a CPA that writes an annual report for a multinational corporation, or a journalist, or someone that writes and edits textbooks, or literary journals, or goes to work at Random House, or invents some new form of the e-reader, I think he should not put his passion on the back burner. He should find a way to monetize his passion.
That's cool. I didn't know didn't know your son was writing. It's 45 pages. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a little creepy what he writes, but it's also, and he and his buddies have a Facebook page called Publishers Forum, where Avery posts his writing, and then his buddies can critique what he writes. Crazy, which to me speaks a little bit to his self-confidence that he's willing to put it out there.
That's cool. Yeah. So, I figured you'd say, I'm sure that you could probably you could imagine a couple different areas where he would excel, or a couple different roles for him that would be good fits.
I think it's up to him, and what I need to realize is what I would view as a logical path may not exist in 10 years when he finds himself in the workplace. And so I think he needs the kind of agility and flexibility and openness and curiosity that maybe people in my generation didn't require. I feel like I feel sometimes a little left behind because traditional career paths are changing, and you don't go to work for a company for 30 years anymore and get a gold watch at the end.
Yeah, my dad does.
Yeah, that's our parents' generation. And I feel like it's just things just change at light speed.
So let me ask you this question. What are 3 things you've done in your life that you're most proud of?
Just in life in general?
Yeah.
So, of course, raising a son to be a young man of character and accomplishment and faith. And so that would be one. And that could all turn on a dime. That project is ongoing. Let's see. 2.
I'm sure he won't get arrested anytime soon.
I know. So not. 2 would be having the privilege of serving the president of the United States, and specifically taking an intern program that had a reputation it didn't deserve and creating from scratch the processes and metrics and programming to substantiate the reputation, the external reputation. So working on the internal in order to substantiate the external.
Did you clean up that whole Lewinsky man? I mean, did you make sure that no more Monicas came in?
So, yeah, definitely. But I'll tell you this funny story. There was this reporter for the Post named Dan Frimkin, and he was only online.
I've heard of him.
You've heard of him?
I've read his blog, yeah.
So he's an ass. And I'll tell you why, because...
Well, I know he didn't like Bush.
No, he hated him. So one day in the Frimkin column, when an intern brought this to me, it says, "Hey, is that... it looks like Monica Lewinsky is running the White House intern program." No, that's just Ann Gray, the new intern coordinator.
He wrote that?
Yes, he did. And I didn't know whether to save it or burn it. I mean...
That's inappropriate.
It was a little harsh. Possibly not untrue, but just because I think it was an appearance thing for him. The dark hair, the round face, the blue eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a jerk. That's lame.
Yeah, no funny.
Well, I don't know what he does. I mean, now that Bush is out of office, I don't know what he does anymore because all of his columns were just Bush bashing. So I don't know what he has to do.
Still on. That's so funny. So did I give you 3? I gave you 2.
Oh, yeah, that was 2.
So then the third one would be coming to Darden. I never in a million years imagined that I would have this privilege, and I told my boss when I walked into Darden the first day, I said, I feel the way I did the first day I walked into the West Wing, that I didn't know what was coming, but I knew it was big. And I felt that way walking into Darden and meeting all of these. I'm humbled, truly, to be in this class with all of these extraordinary people. A few interesting characters, but by and large, just extraordinary people of character.
Not mutually exclusive categories.
Yes, some are extraordinary characters. But it's humbling. It is humbling. And I still, it's funny, I've been getting report cards for we finished 2 terms and 2 LRs.
Yep.
And every time I get my report card, I'm like, oh my gosh. And, I'm not lighting the Darden world on fire, granted, but I'm keeping pace with my peers who, in my perspective, are so much, have so much more professional and intellectual and personal capacity than I often feel like I bring to the table. And I've only recently, like within the past couple weeks, and I said this to Anthony Wong last night, you know what? I'm one of them. When am I going to stop thinking that I'm not good enough to be here? Right now. I'm good enough to be in this class.
You're
good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, some people like me.
There's probably a good chunk of the class who you're kicking their ass.
I wouldn't go that far now, Justin, but there are people who aren't happy with what they see on their report card, and I know that sometimes. And now, I don't think my professional capacity is. I don't think that the report card is any indicator of my professional capacity. I think it's just a metric that I can use to say, you know what, I am good enough to be here. They didn't make a mistake letting me in. I'm not positive what I'm bringing to the table, but I'm sure I'll figure it out before it's all over. But I'm worthy, and so I would say that's it.
I'll just tell you a little story from my own personal experience. Is going to Harvard. Is that like everybody that comes in mostly thinks like freshman year they're like, I'm the mistake. I was the admissions. I don't belong here. And everyone's kind of nervous about that. I was, and then by the time like my 4 years were over. I didn't set the world on fire at Harvard either, but I came out okay. I came in like right about average, and there was like a good year or 2 after graduation when I really beat myself up over that because like I could have done better, I should have done better, especially because like freshman and sophomore years were not as good, and then they got a lot better junior senior year, and I was like, oh, if only I'd tried as much the first 2 years. And I left a lot on the table. I could have done more. I could have tried harder. And it really bothered me. And then finally, after maybe about a year and a half, 2 years out, I finally was able to say, average at Harvard, it's pretty good. It's good enough.
Pretty good.
Move on.
And has anyone asked you for your grades since you left school?
Well, it's funny is I got over it, and it didn't. That those thoughts didn't come back to me until applying for Darden.
Really?
Well, because then I had to order my transcripts and look at them. And then I saw like some of those freshman and sophomore year grades again. I was like, ugh. I'm like, oh, I remember that class. Ugh. And it kind of came back all over again. But then I got over it again.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that because you're right. That's but what a great lesson to learn in your 20s, and I'm just now figuring it out in my 40s.
Well, now I really don't have to worry about it because now I figure, well, they were good enough for Darden, so
that's right.
And now they kind of don't matter anymore. Now the Darden grades matter,
exactly.
But the Harvard ones don't.
But the Darden grades, even I can't imagine I'm going to end up someplace where they're going to want to see my grades.
Yeah, probably very few.
Unless you do on-grounds recruiting.
Unless you're going to get another degree or some really super competitive job. I don't know what it might be where they have their pick of like any Darden grad or any HBS or Wharton grad. Mm-hmm. And then they'll be like, yeah, let's see your grades because they can. But I don't know what that job would be or what.
I think not at this jump, like not at this stage in the game.
Not that many, if any.
But I do feel like this is on my dime, and so I feel like if I'm getting what I need to be getting out of the program, that my grades should be at a certain level. I look at it more that way than, oh, what if I have to show them to somebody?
Yeah, you don't.
Don't. That's right. That's right.
Okay, so let's, we're probably getting near the end here, but I wanted to ask you this question.
I love your questions, by the way. They're really good.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, mostly really I just kind of thought of stuff I've asked myself over my own search, but let me ask you this question. What do you think is the most important thing in whatever job you might have next? Would it be your job function? Would it be the industry you're in? Would it be the people you work with? Would it be the mission of whatever the organization is? Or something else? Any one of those?
And I can only pick one?
No, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, all of the above.
Okay, that's it, folks.
And a salary, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that. Money, lifestyle.
This woman, Anita McBride, who was Mrs. Bush's chief of staff, gave me some pretty good advice, which is where you work and for whom is almost more important than what you do. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. That if you are in a place where you are pleased and proud to work and working with people with whom you are honored to work, that the rest of the pieces are going to fall into place. And so I guess I would have to pick culture and as a top priority. But I also think that the culture, it has to be a culture where there's a common goal and where the people in the environment ascribe to the culture and the goal, whatever it is. And it has to be a culture where people care about doing things the right way, meaning with integrity and with attention to detail, not in a perfectionist necessarily way, but where people have their eye on the goal. And
the goal meaning
the goal,
throughput.
Sure, the goal meaning whatever the throughput might be.
Inventory and operating expense.
So those would be two of the. I think the culture probably drives a lot of the other characteristics. The culture would be the core, and then the people, the goal, the mission, the logistics, everything else, the salary, everything else flows from that.
That's a good answer, because that was not one of the ones I'd thought of, but that really does drive other things. Because I always think, to me, like the people I work with is really important. I don't know, it's just, I feel like part of me is kind of looking, every job I've ever had, I'm kind of like looking for some kind of community to be a part of or something, or looking for, I don't know, just to be part of some kind of group that feels right.
Right.
And I never made that link, that the culture of the organization drives what kind of people are there and how they act. That's a good point. I got to think about that. Because, it's just like, it's not, you don't just get lucky. Like, it's not like you just hire a bunch of people and they all turn out to be great people. Like, there's something, at least hopefully, there's something behind that process to select those people. It's not just an accident.
I want someone that hires me, or I want to hire someone that really wants to be there. And you cannot train attitude. You can teach people technical skills. They're limited sometimes by their capacity and aptitude, but you cannot train attitude.
So just to wrap up, one thing you said at the beginning I thought was interesting is that when you were talking about your career arc to date, is that you said that a lot of your opportunities have come from somebody coming and tapping you on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it's a good thing. It's nice to be, wanted and selected. But I also think that to get to the next level, like maybe you've got to, be the one making the decision as opposed to being picked. Yes. You've got to pick the right thing, which is hard.
It's not a pull operation any longer. This is the push. I thank you for saying that. I agree. And it's important, and it's you're right. I've always said I've had this lovely accidental career, and it has been lovely, and it's been accidental. But I think that the time for that is probably behind me for right now, and I need to make some intentional choices, and it's a hard shift to make.
Yeah, I'll admit that whole line of thought has occurred to me thinking about not about jobs but about girlfriends. But so that's why I was aware of it. But we'll leave it at that.
Oh, we can talk about that. I think the mic is still on.
No, I think that's a different podcast.
Yeah. That would be the Sex, Lies, and Audio Tape podcast.
Yeah. And it would be a very short episode.
Awesome.
Okay. I feel pretty good. Looks like I think we covered a lot. Anything you want to add, or any final thoughts, or something I did not bring up?
This has been really interesting. I can't wait to hear what the end product is, because I think that I said a few things that I should have been taking notes as I was talking myself, but
you don't have to.
There were a few things that I said that I was surprised to hear myself verbalize. Not that they're not true; they are true, but things that I don't think that I would have. That I would verbalize to Connie or verbalize in a different setting. So I think this is valuable. Thanks.
Good. Glad. Well, that was my hope. So,
yay.
And then you helped me just to play with my GarageBand software again and get these cool looking microphones out.
So I'll interview you now next.
Yeah, stay tuned, folks.
Another
it's
day.
Coming up. Okay, so I think that'll do it. So let me once again thank Anne Gray for coming out to the studio.
Woohoo!
Yeah, round of applause for Anne. Woo! And so that will wrap it up for us, and I think we're going to go get a drink. So that's it. Thanks, folks.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye. Okay. That's it. Thanks to Anne Gray for coming by the studio and for being very patient in hearing this finished product. Thanks to Apple Computers for bringing this past the point of me talking to you with 2 tin cans and a string. Let me see. Thanks to the guy at Whole Foods who just gave me some free chicken. That's not a joke, by the way. Thanks to lots of other people. I'm sure I could remember right now, but I can't, because the most important thing I need to do right now is get some sleep. Thanks to the listeners for tuning in. We'll be back next time with some exciting stuff very soon. Not as long as the last time, I promise. We'll pretend we know what the future looks like. Until next time, I'm Justin Jones.